This is the news on NTA International. I am Charles Alpha. My sign language interpreter is Bamidele John. You can watch these news on Vision TV 24/7 and other social media platforms displayed on your screen. And now the headlines. President Tinubu inaugurates Lagos Red Line Rail Mass Transit. Optimistic of Nigeria's economic recovery soon. Experts advocate promotion of social justice as key to addressing crimes and criminality. And on the foreign scene, security on alert in Chad over attacks on formations. Nigeria will soon enjoy massive economic growth, but first, the people need to persevere and work hard for the administration to achieve its economic goals. This is the message of President Bola Tinubu while inaugurating the first phase of the Lagos State Rail Mass Transit, the Red Rail. Expressing his satisfaction with the achievement of the project he conceived 20 years ago. President Tinubu described the inauguration as a dream come true.
Delighted that as we inaugurate the first phase of the Red Line, we cannot afford to rest on our own. There's much work still to be done at national and subnational level. And no room for complacency. The hope is here. We have a governor in hope. And I'm standing before you, clinging to that hope, assuring you my belief that Nigeria will be out of economic problems.
Meanwhile, President Bola Tinubu has departed Lagos for a two-day official visit to Qatar. The presidential flight 001 took off at about 3 p.m. after inaugurating the Lagos Rail Mass Transit Red Line. The state visit to Qatar is to honor the invitation of Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, Emir of the State of Qatar. In an earlier statement by the presidential spokesman, Ajurin Galali, the visit is to further strengthen cooperation between the two nations in several areas, including security, cultural exchange, and economic development. During the visit, President Tinubu will witness the signing of several agreements focused on boosting Nigeria's real sector and creating value, additive investments. The president will also participate in a business and investment forum that will bring together top-level executives in both the private and public sectors of Nigeria and Qatar to advance cross-sectoral opportunities for mutually beneficial growth and development. Elsewhere, roadblocks and heavy security have been placed around an opposition party's headquarters in Chad's capital. This follows a deadly attack on the security agencies a day after gunfire erupted. Victoria Bassi reports.
Soldiers were deployed around the headquarters of the opposition Socialist Party Without Borders. The government has on Wednesday accused elements of the opposition Socialist Parties Without Borders of plotting the attacks. The PSF is headed by opposition figures Yaya Dillo, one of the aspirants hoping to contest the May 6 presidential elections. Chad Election Agency confirmed the date for the upcoming presidential election, committing to hold 2 rounds with provisional results due on 7th of July. Transitional President Mahamad Idris Deby, ICNO, will be contesting. The country's election agency has said it will publish the list of candidates elected by the Constitutional Council on March 24. Victoria Bassi, NTA News.
And from Chad, we take you now to Senegal, where rescuers have pulled more than 20 bodies from the sea of northern Senegal after a Europe-bound boat loaded with migrants sank. with fears rising for the missing. A little more than 20 bodies had been found, with another 20 people saved. St. Louis Regional Governor Alione Badara Samp confirmed to journalists. Since the afternoon, we have been witnessing lifeless bodies wash up, he said. The local rescuers and the Navy searching for survivors after nightfall. Badara Samp did not say how many passengers were aboard the vessel, but survivors said the number could have been in the hundreds. Madi Diafon, a survivor from Kamanse in the far south of the country, said there were about 300 passengers when the boat left Senegal a week ago. The accident happened in the notoriously dangerous waters of St. Louis. Senegal's coasts are an increasingly common departure point for African migrants heading to the Spanish Canary Island, their port of entry into Europe. And in Sudan and Egypt, they are now working on a trade portfolio that will help prevent further damage to trade exchanges between the two nations. The ongoing conflict in Sudan has the potential to impact trade between the two countries, which reached $1.4 billion in 2022.
The outbreak of an armed conflict between the Sudanese and the Rapid Support Forces in the capital Khartoum is causing trade tension with Egypt. Sudan accounts for 13.2% of the total value of trade exchange between Egypt and the African continent. Trade Minister Al-Fateh Abdullah says his ministry is awaiting arrangements from the Central Bank of Sudan regarding a trade portfolio that features a unified tariff agreement between Sudan and Egypt. Al-Fateh adds that new wallet's currency will be unified and will be agreed upon by Sudan and Egypt together.
We are working on establishing a portfolio for trade goods between Egypt and Sudan. This portfolio will be using the back-to-back deal system or the win-win system.
Finance Minister Jibril Ibrahim announced that the government has lost 80% of its revenues due to the destruction of factories and infrastructure in Khartoum. At least 90 factories in the capital alone went out of work due to the conflict. Some economic experts fear that the announced portfolio between Sudan and Egypt will not succeed due to the instability of the exchange rate of the US dollar in Sudan and Egypt.
Especially since Egypt itself suffers from inflation, and with the inflation existing in Sudan, this will lead to a sad collapse with undesirable consequences.
Other experts believe that the trade portfolio will have a positive impact on the two countries, as it will provide foreign exchange and facilitate the movement of border trade, especially after agreeing on a unified custom tariff between the central banks of the two neighboring countries.
US President Joe Biden remains fit for duty, with no new health worries. His doctor said after the 81-year-old last medical ahead of an election in which his age is a key issue. The keenly awaited annual examination at the Walter Reed Military Medical Center outside Washington came just weeks after a special counsel report that portrayed him as elderly and forgetful. Biden, who faces a likely rematch with 77-year-old Donald Trump in November's election, himself joked that the only concern was that doctors think I look too young. Everything's great, he told reporters at the White House. Biden took a short helicopter ride to the medical center that is often used by U.S. presidents and left after 2.5 hours, saluting naval staff and donning sunglasses before leaving in his motorcade. The only new issue this year was Biden's use of a machine to reduce sleep disruption, along with an emergency dental procedure, O'Connor said after the examination. And in France, Senate on Wednesday backed a government move to enshrine the freedom to have an abortion in the Constitution, which will now be voted on at a special Congress. President Emmanuel Macron last year pledged to put the right to terminate a pregnancy, which has been legal in France since 1974, into the Constitution after the U.S. Supreme Court in 2022 overturned the half-century-old right to the procedure, allowing states to ban or curtail abortion. Despite opposition from some conservative members, the upper chamber voted by 267 votes to 50 to back the constitutional change. The lower house National Assembly overwhelmingly voted in favor of making abortion a guaranteed freedom in January, with almost all members of Macron's centrist minority coalition as well as left-wing opposition parties approving it. Macron said he would call a special Congress session of the two chambers at Versailles Palace on Monday for a final vote. Macron welcomed what he called a decisive step by the Senate in his announcement on X, the former Twitter. Justice Barrister Eric Dupont-Moretti said France was on the verge of a historic day when it becomes the first country in the world to protect its constitution, the freedom of women to decide what happens to their bodies. The plan faced some opposition from right-wing senators, and the government chose the expression guaranteed freedom as an apparent compromise between both houses. Global environmental experts are calling for a reduction in the use of plastics and fossil fuels. This was at the 6th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly. The Comfort Fashion reports that the summit is underway in Kenya's capital, Nairobi.
Thousands of delegates from 182 UN member states are gathering for the conference to tackle the triple global crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution through multilateralism. Effective, inclusive, and sustainable multilateral actions to tackle climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution is a focus of this year's assembly.
The United Nations panel on critical energy transition minerals will support these efforts. This assembly plays a vital role in driving environmental action. And you have shown before that you can unite and deliver, most recently with your historic decision to negotiate a plastic treaty.
Raw material of making plastics is fossil fuel.
Plastics campaigner from the environmental group Greenpeace Africa, an environmental activist, said fossil fuels, the raw materials for making plastics, are the major reason leading to climate crisis.
In each and every stage of plastics production, we get gases, greenhouse gases and other emissions being released to the atmosphere, and this exacerbates the climate crisis.
Plastic production has particularly been shown to have harsh impact on low-income and marginalized communities. Most of these, live in sub-Saharan Africa.
The assembly, created in 2012 as an outcome of the UN Conference on Sustainable Development, is the world's highest decision-making body on the environment and has membership from all 193 UN member states. Comfort, Fashion, NTA News.
A report just reaching us now says the former president of Tanzania, Ali Hassan Mwinyi, has died. His death was announced a while ago by President Samia Suluhu Hassan. The former president was hospitalized on February the 24th of 2024 over a chest illness. Ali Hassan Mwinyi is a Tanzanian politician who served as the second president of the United Republic of Tanzania from 1985 to 1995. You're still watching the news on NTA tonight. Thank you for staying with us. Members, House Committee on Environment on Oversight Function to the National Biosafety Management Agency have restated the importance of clean food and need for the agency to constantly update Nigerians on harmful products for their own safety. Much seems to be happening at the National Biosafety Management Agency, but little is heard. The reason why this group of lawmakers on oversight functions were at the agency to further interrogate mode of operation, how the agency is complying with its set mandate of keeping the country safe from harmful emerging technologies. Chairman, House Committee on Environment, Julius Pondi, and members of his committee want the agency to intensify awareness on genetically modified products, particularly in the rural areas.
We've spent about 2 hours here, and we've been spoken to by the DG to see how we can assist. And of course, it has to do with what we take in food cleanliness. So it's important to the Nigerian people, and we'll partner with them to see how we can assist.
Nigeria's National Biosafety Management Agency has continued to take the leading role in both regulation of GMOs and provision of technical support to some African countries. But it is handicapped by office space. And this is one of the numerous areas the DG and BMA desires intervention.
This agency is working to make sure Nigeria is on the biosafety space. And actually, Nigeria is about #1 in Africa.
Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, is optimistic that President Bola Tinubu and his team remain committed to safeguarding the economy and leading a united Nigeria at a public lecture to commemorate the 50th anniversary of Punch newspapers in Lagos. The minister notes that nation building requires patience from the citizens and responsible professionals practices from the media. Salio Guanara reports.
Nigerians from all walks of life converged on Lagos to celebrate and appreciate this media brand for its 5 decades of existence and contribution to the country's democratic journey. The Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, assured that Nigeria, under the current administration, will continue to promote development journalism, especially one that aligns and showcases government programs.
Offer suggestions, but this country has to exist. Let us please talk about all those good things happening in this country. It's not all bad story all the time. The National Bureau of Statistics only recently said that for the first time in a very long time, we are seeing capital import improving by about 66%.
Literary icon Professor Wole Soyinka, in a lecture titled Recovering the Narrative, called on Nigerians to unite for the nation's sovereignty through a decentralized governance structure.
And it is time we stop the pretend decentralization conferences, which have been proved to be mere distractions, especially by those who have a different agenda.
There is no one solution to the problems of this country, but what we can say is that the present administration is determined to do whatever it takes. And so, so many reforms that you see has taken place in the last couple of months. The government will continue to deepen that, and at the end we have what is good for our people.
Stakeholders here agreed that in the nation's democratic journey, it is the time for the media to play a leading role by being sensitive to humanity and promote the nation's values in their act of creativity. In Lagos, Salio Guanara, NTA News.
The federal government is adopting a new platform to make Nigeria a global outsourcing hub by using skills and talent development through collaboration with stakeholders across the public and private sectors to create employment opportunities for youth. A briefing State House correspondent, Deputy Chief of Staff to the President, Senator Ibrahim Hadejia, said the initiative is to drive the country's rise as an outsourcing giant. Scheduled to be launched in Gombe State by the Vice President, the program is part of the broader agenda for national transformation to serve as a tool for poverty alleviation.
These spread across, in conjunction with state governments, which I will encourage other state governors to also come in and invest. Instead of investing in empowerment programs, dishing out implements to young people who may or may not utilize them, or providing tools that may or may not be fit for purpose in that particular area. A state governor can invest in providing the infrastructure, the building, with the support of other government agencies like NIDA, Federal Ministry of Communication. I think with this kind of partnership, you'll see a situation where, in collaboration with state governments and the federal government, they provide most of what is required. She provides the training, and before you know it, 1,000, 2,000 in leaps and bounds, you can absorb 3,000 youths within the space of 18 months. And like I said, these 3,000 youths will be earning US dollars. Very good salaries, that would probably be far away than the average salary in your state. Better to have 1,000 well-paying jobs who will pay taxes to the government, we can derive revenue, than 20,000 haphazard employment arrangements.
We've created a structured training based on that need. So we are matching the skill sets with the need of the international market. So we are starting with different trainings, customer service trainings, sales and marketing training internationally, software development for the international market, accounting as a service for international market and domestic, legal as a service, just to mention a few.
It is also aimed at channeling Nigerian youth to the global market by engaging businesses and partners to be part of the nation's inspiring progress in advancing the future of work. Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Lateef Fagbemi, SAN, has urged heads of agencies and parastatals under the Federal Ministry of Justice to come up with initiatives that will improve public service delivery strategies in the justice sector. The Attorney General stated this at a performance contract signing reiterated for heads of agencies under the ministry in Abuja. Chukunan Songwabweze has the reports.
The retreat, which seeks to actualize the ministerial deliverables as well as the presidential priority areas for the justice sector, is heralded by the declaration and signing of the performance bond by heads of the 9 agencies under the Federal Ministry of Justice. With the overall aim of enhancing the socio-economic development of the nation, the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Lateef Fagbemi, SAN, emphasized the need for collective responsibility for an improved governance and effective service delivery.
I will hold every head of agency to the highest standard of performance in line with the declarations you have made today. It is therefore imperative that you cascade the contents of your presentation to all levels of leadership in your agencies in order to ensure performance on the job and a clear understanding of your mandates under the performance bond.
I must re-emphasize that every agency present here today is integral to the success of the agenda given to the Honorable Attorney General by the President.
Presentations on their alignment with the sector's plan, the 2024 work plan developed from their initiatives, as well as targets drawn from their agency's strategic plan and SWOT analysis were made by the heads of the agencies.
We are the only institution in Nigeria, that have 8 specialized journals in matters actually of law that most law faculties do not cover.
I further assure the Honorable Attorney General of my resolve to strongly actualize NAPTIP's strategic plan, which is reflected in our 2024 work plan.
All those internal displacements that can happen, and communities move, they need immediate human rights intervention. But because we don't have the funds, and before we can access the funds, at times a lot of things have gone wrong.
This is new Nigerian governance. There is no measurement, and public service needs to be measured in concrete terms.
To be evaluated on a quarterly basis, the performance contract will serve as reference point to appraise the agency's successes, challenges, as well as identify areas of improvement within the justice sector. Chukunan Songwabweze, NTN News.
Promoting social justice in Nigeria, democracy is identified as panacea for addressing crimes and criminality across the country. This was the thrust of the 2024 lecture by the Nigerian Institute of Advanced Legal Studies on the theme, Access to Justice and Substance of Democracy. What nexus? Judiciary correspondent Austin Anyebe reports.
You cannot have
a sustainable democracy that does not actually provide a platform for access to the court and access to justice by all without any form of discrimination.
Chief George, in his presentation, says the judiciary is the foundation of democracy. As such, citizens must have unhindered access to justice. He laments situations where about 70% of Nigerians, due to poverty and socio-economic barriers, are denied access to justice as potential for continued unrest, as evidenced in the rising cases of banditry and regional agitation in some quarters.
The greatest denial of access to justice in our country is in civil and commercial cases, which are left hanging indefinitely in our courts. This is not good for commerce. This is not good for investment. If we can resolve political cases in 180 days, I think as a legal profession, we ought to come to an agreement. Maybe 5 years, maybe 6 years.
Chief Justice of Nigeria and Chairman Council of NAIAS, Justice Olukayode Ariwola, and retired Justice Umaru Abdullahi, commend NAIAS for upholding the mandates of the Institute in the areas of legal research, education, and training of judicial officers across the country.
Who have essentially contributed to the development of Nigerian law and jurisprudence through administration of justice, legal scholarship, law and policy implementation,
and honor those who have stabilized Nigeria through their legal practices. In Abuja, Austin Anyebe, NTA News.
And just before we go now, a quick look at the weather prospect for Friday in Nigeria and in some parts of the world.